The stars burned cold and distant as Admiral Park Tiho stood at the window of his command ship. Behind him, the bridge was quiet, too quiet. His crew worked at their stations, but nobody spoke. Nobody laughed. The usual sounds of a living ship were gone. All that remained was fear. Tiho was 63 years old. He had fought in 17 major battles. He had watched friends die. He had buried his own son in the soil of a colony that no longer existed. And now, standing here at the edge of everything, he knew that this would be his last fight. The Veloric were coming. For 30 years, humanity had fought them. For 30 years, they had lost. Colony after colony had fallen. Earth itself had barely survived 3 invasions. Billions were dead. And now, the Veloric were sending their largest fleet ever. Over 500 warships were on their way to Corio Station, the last human stronghold in this sector of space. Tiho had 47 ships, 47 against 500. He turned away from the window and looked at his officers. Commander Ryu Jun stood near the tactical display, his arms crossed, his face hard. Jun was a practical man. He did not believe in miracles. He believed in math, and the math said they were all going to die. Near the weapons console sat Lieutenant Kang Mina. She was young, barely 30, but she had seen more death than most soldiers twice her age. Her hands moved across her controls with practiced speed, checking and rechecking the missile systems. She would not give up. Tiho knew that about her. She would fight until her last breath. And then there was Captain Yoon Hana. She sat at her station, but her eyes were not on her screens. She was looking at something on her personal tablet, something she had been watching for days now. Tiho had noticed, but he had not asked. Everyone needed something to hold onto in times like these. He walked to the center of the bridge and pressed the button on his command chair. His voice would now reach every ship in the fleet. "This is Admiral Park Tiho," he said. His voice was calm. It had to be. "In 6 hours the Veloric will arrive. They outnumber us 10 to 1. They have bigger ships, more guns, and more soldiers." He paused. Around him his crew listened. Across the fleet, thousands of men and women stopped what they were doing. "I will not lie to you," Tiho continued. "Our chances are not good. Some of you will not see tomorrow. Some of you will never go home, but I want you to remember something. We are human. We have been fighting for our lives since we first crawled out of caves. We have faced extinction before, ice ages, wars, disease. Every time they said we would die. Every time we survived." He took a breath. "Today we fight. Not because we think we will win. We fight because that is who we are. We fight because surrender is not in our blood. And we fight because somewhere out there on Earth, on the stations, on the ships still hiding in the dark, our children are watching. They need to know that we did not give up. They need to know that we stood tall until the end." He ended the transmission. The bridge was silent for a moment. Then Mina spoke. "Good speech, Admiral." Tiho almost smiled. "Thank you, Lieutenant. Let us hope it was not my last." He walked to where Hana sat. She quickly put away her tablet, but not before he caught a glimpse of what she was watching. It was an old video, the image grainy and damaged. A massive ship filled the screen, bigger than anything in the current fleet. "What is that?" Tiho asked. Hana hesitated. "It is nothing, Admiral, just old footage." "Show me." She handed him the tablet. Tiho watched as the ship in the video moved through space. It was beautiful in a way that modern ships were not. Its hull was thick and powerful. Its guns were enormous. On its side he could barely read the name, ISS Beekdu. "The Beekdu," Tiho said quietly. "I have not heard that name in years." "It was the greatest warship ever built," Hana said. 200 years ago, during the First Contact War, it led the human fleet to 3 major victories. Some people say it could destroy an entire enemy fleet by itself. "And then it disappeared," Tiho said. He handed back the tablet. "I know the story. It chased an enemy fleet through a wormhole and was never seen again. Most people think it was destroyed." Some people think it ran away, June said from across the bridge. His voice was bitter. Some legend. Hana shook her head. I do not believe that. I have studied every record, every report. The Beakdu did not run, something else happened. I think it is still out there. Out where? Mina asked. The galaxy is a big place. I do not know, Hana admitted, but I have always believed. Tiho looked at the young captain. He saw something in her eyes that he had not seen in a long time. Hope. Foolish, impossible hope. He was about to speak when the door to the bridge opened. Chief Engineer Beak Siak walked in slowly. He was the oldest man on the ship, nearly 90, but he refused to retire. He said he would die in space, not in some hospital bed on Earth. Siak stopped when he saw the tablet in Hana's hands. His face went pale. What is wrong? Tiho asked. Siak walked closer. His eyes were fixed on the screen. Is that the Beakdu? Yes, Hana said. I was just showing the Admiral. Siak's hands were shaking. I know that ship. I served on her. The bridge went completely silent. Everyone turned to look at the old engineer. What did you say? Tiho asked. I was a young cadet, Siak said. His voice was distant, lost in memory. I was assigned to the Beakdu for my first posting. I was only 17. She was the most beautiful ship I had ever seen. Captain No Hyun was in command. He was a hard man but fair. He loved that ship like it was his own child. He paused and his eyes grew wet. 3 days before the final mission, I was transferred to another ship. Orders from command. I never knew why. I watched the Beakdu fly into that wormhole. I watched her disappear, and I never saw her again. You never knew what happened to them? Hana asked. Siak shook his head. Nobody did. For years I hoped they would come back. I waited and waited, but they never did. Eventually I stopped hopping, but I never stopped wondering. An alarm suddenly filled the bridge. June checked his display and his face went dark. Admiral, the Veloric fleet has arrived early. They will be here in 2 hours. Tiho straightened his uniform. The time for stories was over. The time for battle had come. All ships battle stations, he commanded. Today we stand. Today we fight. And whatever happens, let the galaxy remember that humanity does not go quietly. As the crew rushed to their positions, Hana looked one more time at the image of the Beakdu on her tablet. She whispered a quiet prayer to whoever might be listening. If you are out there, she said, now would be a good time to come home. Then she put the tablet away and prepared for war. The Veloric fleet came out of hyperspace like a storm of death. 512 warships filled the darkness of space, their hulls gleaming under the distant light of dying stars. They moved in perfect formation, each ship knowing exactly where it should be. The Veloric were many things, but they were not careless. They had conquered 100 worlds. They had destroyed species older than humanity, and now they were here to finish the job. Admiral Park Tiho watched them come on the main screen. His jaw was tight, but his hands were steady. Behind him, his crew worked in grim silence. They had known this moment was coming. Now it was here. Admiral, Commander Ryu Jun said, the enemy fleet is taking attack positions. Lead ships will be in firing range in 15 minutes. Tiho nodded. Order all ships to hold the defensive line. We protect Koryo Station for as long as possible. The station floated behind them, a massive structure that held the last 2 million humans in this part of space. Civilians, families, children. They were counting on the fleet to keep them safe. Tiho knew he would probably fail them, but he would not fail them without a fight. A signal came through the communication system. June looked at his display with disgust. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the Veloric flagship. It is their leader, High Commander Orath. Put it on screen. The face that appeared was not human. The Veloric had gray skin, 4 eyes arranged in a diamond shape, and no visible mouth. They spoke through a vibrating membrane on their neck. Orath was larger than most Veloric, decorated with golden marks that showed his rank. His 4 eyes stared at Tiho with contempt. "Human Admiral," Orath said, his voice translated by the computer. "Your situation is hopeless. Your fleet is small. Your weapons are weak. Your species is dying. Surrender now and I will make your deaths quick. Resist and I will make them slow." Tiho stood tall. "High Commander, I have a counteroffer. Turn your fleet around and go home. You have already taken enough from us. There is nothing left here worth dying for." Orath made a sound that might have been laughter. "Everything human is worth destroying. You are a disease in this galaxy, a small, violent species that does not know its place. Today, we end you." The transmission cut off. Tiho turned to his crew. "Well," he said, "at least we know where we stand. All ships prepare to engage." The first wave of Veloric ships moved forward. They were fast, sleek vessels designed for attack. Behind them came the dreadnoughts, massive warships with cannons that could tear through any human shield. Lieutenant Kang Mina was the first to fire. Her missiles streaked across space, finding their targets. 2 Veloric ships exploded in balls of orange flame. A cheer went up on the bridge, but it died quickly. More ships were coming, always more. "Human fleet, this is the Endurance," Tiho broadcast. "All ships fire at will, make every shot count." The battle began in earnest. Human ships formed a wall of fire, their weapons cutting into the advancing enemy. Veloric ships burned and died, but for every one destroyed, 3 more took its place. Captain Yoon Hana worked at her station, coordinating targeting data across the fleet. Her screens were filled with numbers and lines, the mathematics of survival. She moved targets, redirected fire, tried to find weakness in the enemy formation. But the Veloric were good, too good. "Admiral," she said, "we are losing ships. The brave heart is gone. The soul pride is taking heavy damage. We cannot hold this line much longer." "We hold until we cannot," Tiho said. "Then we fall back to the second line." Chief Engineer Beek Siak was in the engine room, pushing the old reactor harder than it should go. Warning lights flashed all around him, but he ignored them. He had been doing this for 70 years. He knew what a ship could take. "Come on, old girl," he whispered to the Endurance. "Give me everything you have." On the bridge, a new alarm sounded. June checked his display and his face went white. "Admiral, long-range sensors are detecting something strange. There is an energy signature coming from deep space, beyond the battle zone." Tiho frowned. "Veloric reinforcements." "No, sir. The signature does not match any Veloric technology. It does not match any technology in our current database." Hana suddenly looked up from her station. Her heart was beating fast. "Let me see that signal." June sent the data to her screen. Hana stared at it. Her hands began to shake. "This is impossible," she whispered. "What is it?" Tiho demanded. "Admiral, I need to check the old military archives. The really old ones, from the First Contact War." "We are in the middle of a battle, Captain." "Please, sir, this is important." Tiho hesitated, then nodded. Hana worked fast, pulling up files that had not been opened in decades. She compared the energy signature on her screen to the old records, and then she found it. "Oh my God," she said. "Report," Tiho ordered. "Admiral, this energy signature matches the reactor core of the ISS Beekdu. The match is 97% accurate." Silence fell on the bridge. Even the sounds of battle seemed distant for a moment. "That is impossible," June said. "The Beekdu has been gone for 200 years. Its reactor would have failed long ago." "I am telling you what the data shows," Hana said. "Something is out there, and it has the same power signature as the Beekdu." Another explosion rocked the ship. Tiho grabbed his chair for support. On the screen, he watched 2 more human ships die in balls of flame. "It is probably just debris," he said. "Or sensor error. We cannot afford to be distracted by ghosts. Focus on the battle." But down in the engine room, Beek Siak had heard the communication. He stood frozen, his old heart pounding. He remembered that reactor. He had worked on it as a young cadet, learning from engineers who had built it with their own hands. "That is her," he whispered to himself. "That is the Beakdu. I would know that signature anywhere." On the Veloric flagship, Warlord Sen approached High Commander Orath. Sen was smaller than his commander, but his 4 eyes showed intelligence and caution. "High Commander," Sen said, "our rear sensors are detecting something unusual, an unidentified energy signature approaching from deep space." Orath barely looked up from his display. "The humans have no reinforcements. They are alone. Whatever it is, it does not matter." Sen was not so sure. He had fought humans before. He had learned never to underestimate them, but he said nothing more. The battle continued. Human ships fell one by one. The defensive line began to break. Choreo stations' shields started to fail under long-range bombardment. Admiral Tiho made a decision he had hoped to avoid. "All ships fall back to the station. We make our final stand there." The human fleet retreated, leaving burning debris behind. The Veloric advanced, sensing victory. Orath was pleased. This would be over soon. But Hana could not stop watching that signal on her screen. It was moving, slowly at first, then faster, much faster. Whatever it was coming toward the battle. "Admiral," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "the signal is getting stronger. Something is coming, something big." Tiho looked at her. For the first time in years, he felt something he had forgotten. It was small, and it was probably foolish, but it was there. It was hope. And in the darkness of space, far beyond the battle, ancient engines roared to life. A ship that should have been dead began its final journey home. Choreo Station was dying. Its shields flickered like a candle in a storm. Fires burned on 3 decks. Emergency teams ran through smoke-filled corridors, trying to save what they could. In the shelters below, 2 million people huddled together and prayed. Admiral Park Tiho stood on the bridge of the Endurance, watching his fleet crumble. 23 ships remained, 23 out of 47. The rest were debris, floating in the void between the station and the advancing Veloric armada. "Admiral," Commander Ryu Jun said, "the station shields will fail in approximately 12 minutes. After that, they will board." Tiho nodded slowly. He had known this moment would come. He had prepared himself for it, but knowing and accepting were different things. "Order all remaining ships to form a final defensive ring around the station. We buy as much time as we can." "Sir, that is suicide." "I know." The human ships moved into position. They were battered, damaged, running on emergency power and determination. But they moved. They always moved. On the Veloric flagship, High Commander Orath watched the human formation with amusement. They were like insects, he thought, small and helpless but still trying to sting. "Order all dreadnoughts forward," he commanded. "Finish this." The massive Veloric warships advanced. Their guns powered up, ready to deliver the final blow. Victory was certain now. Then Warlord Sen screamed. Orath turned sharply. Sen was staring at his display with all 4 eyes wide open in what could only be terror. "What is wrong with you?" Orath demanded. "Behind us," Sen shouted. "Something is behind us." Orath looked at the rear sensors. At first he saw nothing, just empty space. Then a shadow moved across the stars. Something enormous was blocking the light. "What is that?" Orath whispered. The shadow grew larger. It was a ship, but not just any ship. It was huge, bigger than anything in the Veloric fleet, bigger than anything Orath had ever seen. Its hull was covered in scars, old wounds from battles fought across the galaxy. Strange metals patched the damage, some of them not from any species Orath recognized. The ship looked ancient. It looked tired, but it also looked angry. On its side, barely visible under centuries of damage, was a name, ISS Beakdu. On the Endurance, Captain Yoon Hana stared at her screen with tears running down her face. She could not believe it. She had hoped, she had prayed, but she had never truly believed it would happen. "Admiral," she said, her voice breaking, "the Beakdu. It is the Beakdu." She came back. The bridge erupted in chaos. Officers shouted, pointed at screens, embraced each other. Even Commander June, the most practical man on the ship, stood frozen with his mouth open. Chief Engineer Beak Siak burst onto the bridge. He was an old man, his body weak, but in that moment he moved like he was young again. He pushed past everyone until he could see the main screen. "Oh," he said softly, tears streamed down his wrinkled face. "Oh, my beautiful girl, you came home." A signal came through the communication system. It was broadcast on all frequencies, heard by every human and every Veloric in the battle zone. The voice was old, it was tired, but it was strong. "This is Captain Nohyan of the ISS Beakdu. We heard you were having trouble, thought we would drop by." Admiral Tiho felt something crack inside his chest. All the years of fighting, all the losses, all the hopelessness. And now this. A legend had returned. "Captain No," Tiho said into his communicator. "This is Admiral Park Tiho of the Human Defense Fleet. We thought you were dead." "Admiral," Nohyan replied, "I have been hearing that for 200 years. It has not been true yet." On the Veloric flagship, High Commander Oreth was screaming orders. "All ships, target that vessel, destroy it now." 100 Veloric warships turned to face the Beakdu. Their guns fired together, a wall of energy that should have destroyed anything in its path. The Beakdu did not even slow down. Her shields, upgraded with technology stolen from a dozen alien species, absorbed the attack. Then she fired back. Her main cannon was like nothing the Veloric had ever seen. It was not just one weapon. It was dozens of weapons from different civilizations, all combined into something new, something terrible. 3 Veloric dreadnoughts vanished in a single shot, not destroyed, vanished. There was nothing left but atoms. "Impossible," Oreth gasped. "That is impossible." But it was happening. The Beakdu carved through the Veloric formation like a blade through paper. Ships that tried to stop her died. Ships that tried to run were too slow. She was old, but she was not weak. 200 years of survival had made her stronger than any ship in the galaxy. Captain Nohyan stood on his bridge, surrounded by his crew. They were a mixed group. Some were old like him, survivors of the original crew who had never given up hope. Some were younger, the children and grandchildren of those who had lived and died aboard the ship. Some were rescued humans from lost colonies, people the Beakdu had found and saved during her long journey home. "Target the enemy flagship," No ordered. "Let us say hello to their commander." Warlord Sin grabbed Oreth's arm. "High Commander, we must retreat. That ship is beyond anything we have." "Release me," Oreth shouted. "I do not retreat from humans." "That ship has been fighting for 200 years. It has survived things we cannot imagine. If we stay here, we die." Oreth hesitated. For the first time in his long military career, he felt true fear. The humans were not supposed to have weapons like this. They were supposed to be weak, dying, helpless. This was wrong. All of this was wrong. On the Endurance, Admiral Tiho made a decision. "All ships follow the Beakdu. We attack now." The 23 remaining human ships surged forward. They were small next to the Beakdu, but they were not nothing. Together with the legendary Warship, they tore into the Veloric fleet. Lieutenant Kang Mina fired her weapons with tears of joy in her eyes. Every shot was a celebration. Every explosion was a prayer answered. "This is for Earth," she shouted. "This is for everyone we lost." Commander June coordinated the attack, his practical mind finally embracing the impossible. "All ships, target their engines. Do not let them run." The Veloric formation began to collapse. Ships that had been advancing with confidence now fled in panic. The hunters had become the hunted. On Koryo Station, the civilians heard the news over the speakers. The Beakdu had returned. Hope had arrived. People fell to their knees and wept. Parents held their children and whispered that everything would be okay. Captain Hana looked at the main screen, watching the Biktu fight. She had studied that ship her entire life. She had believed in it when everyone else had forgotten. And now it was here, doing what it was built to do. "Welcome home," she whispered. "Welcome home." Old Beak stood beside her. He could not stop crying. "Captain No kept them together," he said. "For 200 years he kept them together. He never gave up. He never stopped trying to come home." Admiral Tiho placed a hand on the old engineer's shoulder. "None of them did. They are human. Giving up is not in our nature." The battle raged on, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The legend had returned, and legends do not lose. High Commander Orath stared at the destruction of his fleet and knew that everything had changed. The humans were not dying. The humans were fighting back, and they had a weapon that could not be stopped. For the first time, Orath understood what the Veloric had never grasped about humans. They were small. They were weak. They died easily, but they never ever stayed down. And that made them the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The Veloric fleet was breaking apart. Ships that had come to destroy humanity were now fighting to survive. The Biktu moved through them like a storm, her ancient guns never stopping, her shields holding against everything they threw at her. Admiral Park Tiho opened a channel to the legendary warship. "Captain No, this is Admiral Tiho. We need to coordinate our attack. Can we dock with you? I want to meet you face to face." There was a pause. Then Captain No Hyun's voice came through, warm despite his exhaustion. "Admiral, I have been waiting 200 years to shake hands with someone from home. Please come aboard." Tiho turned to his crew. "Commander June, you have the bridge. Keep the pressure on them. I am going to the Biktu." "Admiral, is that wise?" June asked. "We are still in combat." Tiho almost smiled. "Commander, a ship that has survived 2 centuries just saved us from extinction. I think I owe them a personal thank you." A shuttle carried Tiho, Captain Hana, and Chief Engineer Beak Siak to the Biktu. As they approached, Hana could not stop staring out the window. The ship was massive, bigger than any vessel she had ever seen. Its hull told the story of its journey. She saw blast marks from weapons she did not recognize. She saw patches made from metals that gleamed in strange colors. She saw the scars of 100 battles, each one a chapter in an impossible story. "She is beautiful," Hana whispered. "She always was," Siak said quietly. His old hands pressed against the window like he was trying to touch her. The shuttle landed in a docking bay that looked like it had been rebuilt many times. Human technology mixed with alien designs, creating something unique. The air smelled different, older, like breathing history. A group stood waiting for them. At the front was an old man in a worn uniform. He was thin, his hair white, his face lined with age and hardship, but his eyes were sharp and alive. He stood straight, shoulders back, like a soldier who had never forgotten how to be strong. "Admiral Tiho," the old man said, "I am Captain No Hyun. Welcome aboard the Biktu." Tiho stepped forward and saluted. Then he did something he had not planned. He pulled the old captain into an embrace. "Captain," Tiho said, his voice thick with emotion, "you saved us. You saved all of us." No Hyun returned the embrace. "We are human, Admiral. We save each other. That is what we do." Behind No stood his crew. Tiho looked at them with wonder. There were old faces and young faces, men and women of all ages. Some wore the remains of ancient uniforms. Others wore clothes made from materials Tiho did not recognize. They were thin, tired, marked by years of struggle, but they were alive. They were home. One young woman stepped forward. She had dark hair and strong features. She could not have been more than 25 years old. "Admiral," No said, "this is Go Ara. She is our weapons officer. She was born on this ship. She has never seen Earth." Ara bowed respectfully. "Admiral, it is an honor to meet you." Tiho looked at her with amazement. You were born here, on the Beakdu. Yes, sir. My grandmother was part of the original crew. She raised my mother here. My mother raised me. We have been fighting our way home for as long as I can remember. Hana stepped forward, unable to contain her questions. Captain No, what happened? Where have you been for 200 years? No smiled sadly. That is a long story, Captain, but I will tell you. He led them to a room that served as both a meeting hall and a memorial. The walls were covered with names, thousands of names. These are the people who have served aboard this ship, No explained. Those who lived, those who died, and those who were born in the space between stars. They are our family. He sat down heavily. The weight of 2 centuries pressed on him. During the First Contact War, we chased a Veloric scouting fleet through an unstable wormhole. We thought we could destroy them before they reported back to their commanders. We were wrong. The wormhole collapsed behind us. We found ourselves on the far side of the galaxy, in space no human had ever seen. He paused, gathering his memories. At first, we tried to find a way home. We searched for stable wormholes, for friendly aliens who could help us. But the galaxy is a dangerous place, Admiral. We encountered species that wanted to kill us, enslave us, or eat us. We fought. We ran. We survived. For 200 years, Hana asked. For 200 years, No confirmed. We found resources where we could. We repaired our ship with whatever materials we could find. We learned new technologies from the aliens we encountered, sometimes through trade, sometimes through war. The Beakdu today is not the same ship that left human space. She has been rebuilt 100 times, but she is still the Beakdu, and we are still her crew. Beak Siak was crying silently. Captain, I was on this ship. Before the final mission, I was transferred away. I always wondered why. No looked at him with recognition. Beak Siak, I remember you. You were just a boy. You remember me. I remember everyone. Command transferred you because they had a feeling about the mission. They wanted some of the young crew to be safe, just in case. They were right to worry. Siak wiped his eyes. I spent my whole life wondering what happened to you, wondering if I could have helped. No reached out and took the old engineer's hand. You could not have helped then, but you can help now. The Beakdu is tired, Siak. She needs good engineers to keep her going. Will you join us? Yes, Siak said without hesitation. Yes, I will. Meanwhile, the battle outside continued. The Veloric were retreating, but they were not finished. High Commander Oreth had gathered his remaining ships around his flagship. He was preparing for a final attack. Warlord Sen approached him carefully. High Commander, we should withdraw. We have lost too many ships. We have not lost until I say we have lost, Oreth snarled. That ship is old. It cannot have unlimited power. If we focus all our remaining fire on it, we can bring it down. And if we cannot? Oreth's 4 eyes burned with hatred. Then I die fighting. I will not run from humans. He gave the order. The remaining Veloric ships formed up for a final attack. Their weapons powered up. They would throw everything they had at the Beakdu. On the human ships, Commander June saw what was happening. Admiral, he broadcast to the Beakdu, the Veloric are gathering for a final push. All remaining ships against us. Tiho looked at No. The old captain nodded and stood up. Then we finish this, No said, together. They returned to the bridge of the Beakdu. Go-Ara was already at her station, her hands moving across controls that mixed ancient human design with alien technology. Captain, she said, all weapons are charged and ready. No took his seat. For 200 years he had sat in this chair. For 200 years he had led this ship through impossible battles. Now at last he was home, and he would protect it. All human ships, this is Captain Nohayan, form up behind the Beakdu. Let us end this war. The fleet moved into position, 23 human ships flying behind the legend. They were small, but they were not afraid. They had hope now. They had something to fight for. Admiral Tiho, No said, would you like to give the order? Tiho smiled. Captain, this is your ship. This is your moment. No looked at his crew, at Ara, who had never seen Earth, at the old survivors who had fought for 2 centuries, at the young ones who had been born between the stars. This is for everyone we lost, No said quietly. This is for everyone who waited for us. This is for home. He raised his hand. All ships attack. The combined human fleet surged forward, and the final battle began. The stars burned with the light of weapons fire as the 2 fleets collided for the last time. High Commander Oreth led his remaining ships in a desperate charge, pouring everything into one final attack. The Biktu stood at the center of the human formation, her ancient hull glowing under the impact of enemy fire. Captain No Hyun sat calmly in his command chair. He had faced worse than this. He had fought aliens that could rip through metal with their bare hands. He had navigated through dying stars. He had survived when survival seemed impossible. This battle was just one more challenge on a journey that had lasted 2 centuries. Ara, he said, target their flagship. Let us remove their leader. Go Ara smiled grimly. Her hands danced across her weapon's console. The main cannon of the Biktu powered up, its energy readings going beyond what any modern ship could produce. Target locked, Captain. Fire. The beam that left the Biktu was not like anything the Veloric had seen. It was a mixture of human engineering and alien technology, refined over 200 years of war. It crossed the distance between the ships in less than a second. Oreth saw it coming. He had just enough time to understand that he had been wrong about everything. The humans were not weak. They were not dying. They were surviving, and survivors learned. Survivors grew stronger. The beam hit his flagship directly in the center. For a moment, the ship seemed to freeze. Then it came apart, piece by piece, breaking into fragments that glowed with heat. High Commander Oreth died without making a sound. Warlord Sen watched from his own ship as his commander disappeared. Around him, the Veloric fleet began to fall apart. Without Orath, there was no one to hold them together. Ships broke formation and began to run. This is Warlord Sen, he broadcast on all frequencies. All Veloric ships cease fire, I am surrendering. Admiral Tiho heard the transmission with disbelief. He turned to Captain No. They are surrendering. The Veloric are surrendering. No nodded slowly. He did not celebrate. He had seen too much death to celebrate killing. Accept their surrender, Admiral. The war should end now. Too many have died. Tiho made the announcement. The remaining Veloric ships powered down their weapons and stopped moving. Human ships surrounded them, ready to fire but holding back. The battle was over. The war was over. Humanity had won. On Koryo Station, the news spread like fire. People who had been hiding in shelters came out into the corridors. They hugged strangers. They wept openly. They shouted the name of the ship that had saved them. Biktu, Biktu, Biktu. The chant echoed through the station, a song of survival, of hope, of home. Hours later, the Biktu docked at Koryo Station. It was the first time in over 200 years that she had touched a human port. Repair crews approached her carefully, like pilgrims approaching a sacred place. The crew of the Biktu disembarked slowly. There were only 83 of them left, all that remained of the hundreds who had served aboard her over the centuries. They stepped off the ship into a crowd of thousands. People cheered, people cried, people reached out to touch them as if to make sure they were real. Captain No Hyun was the last to leave the ship. He walked down the ramp with difficulty, his old legs weak after so many years. Admiral Tiho was waiting for him at the bottom. The 2 men faced each other. Tiho saluted crisply. No returned it. Captain No Hyun, Tiho said formally, on behalf of the human race, I welcome you home. No's eyes filled with tears. For 200 years he had dreamed of this moment. He had wondered if it would ever come. He had feared he would die in the darkness between stars, never seeing home again. "Thank you, Admiral," he said, his voice breaking. "Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for still being here." "We are human," Tiho replied. "We do not give up, you taught us that." Chief Engineer Siak pushed through the crowd. He found his old crewmates, people he had not seen since he was a boy. They were old now, older than him in many ways, but they were alive. They had made it. He embraced them one by one, unable to speak, his heart too full for words. Captain Yunhana found Goara standing alone, looking around the station with wide eyes. For Ara, this was all new. She had lived her entire life on a ship. She had never been in a place with so many people, so much space, so much light. "Are you okay?" Hana asked. Ara nodded slowly. "It is overwhelming. I spent my whole life dreaming about this place, and now I am here. It does not feel real." "It is real," Hana said. "You are home now. Your grandmother would be proud." Ara smiled and tears ran down her face. "She always said we would make it. Every night before she died, she would tell me stories about Earth, about the blue sky and the green trees and the water that covered half the world. I thought they were just stories. I did not believe they could be real." "They are real," Hana said, "and soon you will see them for yourself." The peace negotiations began the next day. Warlord Sen spoke for the Veloric. He was a changed creature, humbled by defeat and terrified of the ship that had destroyed his fleet. "The Veloric Dominion agrees to withdraw from all human territories," he said. "We will return all captured worlds. We will release all human prisoners. We ask only that you do not pursue us." Admiral Tiho looked at Captain No. The old man nodded. "The terms are accepted," Tiho said. "The war is over." In the weeks that followed, the galaxy learned what had happened. The story of the Biktu spread across human space and beyond. A ship that had been lost for 200 years. A crew that had never stopped fighting. A legend that had become real. The Biktu was retired with full military honors. She was too damaged, too old to fight again. But she would never be forgotten. She was placed in orbit around Koryo Station, a monument to human stubbornness, human courage, human hope. Captain No Hyun did not live much longer. His body had been pushed too hard for too many years. But he died peacefully, in a real bed, surrounded by his crew, knowing that he had brought them home. His last words were simple: it was worth it. Goara was given a commission in the new human fleet. She became the youngest captain in history, commanding a ship named after her grandmother. She finally visited Earth, standing on solid ground for the first time in her life, looking up at a blue sky that was more beautiful than any story. Admiral Tiho retired from service. He had done enough fighting for one lifetime. But every year, on the anniversary of the battle, he returned to Koryo Station to stand before the Biktu and remember. Chief Engineer Siak spent his final years aboard the Biktu, even though she no longer flew. He walked her corridors, touched her walls, and whispered to her like an old friend. When he died, his ashes were scattered in space around her, so they would be together forever. And Captain Yoon Hana wrote the story down. Every detail, every moment, every sacrifice. She made sure the galaxy would remember what had happened here. On the last page of her book, she wrote, "They called her a legend, they called her a ghost, but when the darkness came, she was there. She had always been there, and she always would be, because legends do not die. Legends live forever in the hearts of those who remember." Years later, a young child stood in the observation deck of Koryo Station, looking at the Biktu floating in space. Her mother stood behind her. "Mother," the child asked, "is it true? Did that ship really save everyone?" The mother smiled and pulled her daughter close. "Yes, my dear, it is true. When things were darkest, when everyone had given up hope, she came home. She reminded us who we are." "Who are we?" the child asked. The mother looked at the old ship, thinking of everyone who had lived and died aboard her. everyone who had waited 200 years for her return. "We are human," she said. "We survive, we fight, we never give up. No matter how long it takes, no matter how far we have to go, we always find our way home." The child nodded, not fully understanding yet but feeling the truth of the words. Above them the Beakdu waited in silence, her work finally done, her legend secure, her crew at peace at last. And somewhere in the stars, the universe remembered the small species that had refused to die, the species that had looked into the darkness and said no, the species that had turned ghosts into legends and legends into hope. Humanity endured, humanity survived. Humanity came home.